All right. Hello, everyone. Hope you're good. Hope you're fantastic. So, our topic will be the economic circle and economic growth. Okay, let's get into it. So, economic growth is a term we usually hear bandied about. It's a very common term. It's in the news, it's on TV, it's on the radio, it's in the papers. The government's always talking about it. So, what is it? Economic growth is a very simple term. So it's measured by an increase in the real output or income of an economy over time. So see what's happening? Our real output is increasing or our income is increasing over time. So how do we measure this? All we need to do is measure our GDP or our GDP per capita compared to the year before. The GDP per capita is a slightly better way of measuring than your GDP. So we compare our GDP per capita to the year before, and if there's an increase, then we have had economic growth. Very simple. Now there's this other term as well, usually bandied about. Now that's economic development. And that's an increase in the quality of life. So now what happens is normally economic growth should lead to economic development after a long period of time. So because our output and our income has increased, I should increase our quality of life. Okay, so intrinsic values such as leisure time, environmental quality, freedom of expression, they should feed into the picture at some point. We usually use the HDI to measure this, the Human Development Index, because the HDI measures additional factors such as literacy rates, life expectancy, and all these things. They imply a higher income per capita, higher GDP per capita, and also indicate economic development. Okay, but we'll just focus now on economic growth. Okay, so that's a measure of an increase in real output or income of an economy over time. Now here, this is a very easy, intuitive graph showing economic growth. So here we are at our first long run aggregate supply, and then we increase it. So see our national income or our output, if you want to measure it that way, has increased. Okay, so this used to be our former income or former output, and this is our new or current output. Okay, so we've had economic growth, right? Prices are still the same, right? Prices are still the same, but output has increased. So this is economic growth. Okay, so like we've said, economic growth is measured by an increase in the real output or income of an economy over time. There are two key concepts we have to keep in mind when we're talking about economic growth. First one is called actual growth. Okay, so what is actual growth? It's the rate at which the economy is growing. Okay, so it's like the name suggests, actual growth. Okay, so what's the percentage annual increase in national income? What's our actual growth, right? So our potential growth, on the other hand, measures by how much the economy could grow if all its resources were fully employed. Okay, so it's a sort of potential, right? So it's not actual, it's what it could be, right? Hopefully, right? Now the difference between actual growth and potential growth is what we have and we call output gap. So remember, actual is what is, potential is what hopefully could be, right? And the difference is our output gap. So the difference between these two is our output gap. Okay, and of course there are differing schools on how best to measure economic growth. We'll come to that in a bit. And let me show you what actual growth or potential growth looks like. All right, to our left we have actual growth, and to our right we have potential growth. Okay, right. So what's the difference between actual growth and potential growth? Now, like we said, actual is what is, potential is what could be, hopefully. So remember our PPF, we did this in year one, or you could pick it up in any economic textbook. Our PPF shows the maximum possible outcome combinations of two goods or services an economy can achieve when all its resources are fully and efficiently employed. Okay, so when we're on our PPF, we're producing these two goods at the best possible combination. Okay, so here we are, actual growth. Anytime we're on Y, right? Anytime we're on this curve, that's our actual growth. That's the rate at which the economy is actually growing. Any place inside the curve is inefficient. Okay, so we don't want this. We want to be on the curve, because why should we produce just this, right, when we can actually go all the way and produce this, right? Much more. Okay, or even like this, right? So much more, we could do that. And with our potential growth, we're moving this from Y. Say we're moving from Y to Z. So this used to be our Y, and now we're at Z. Okay, and in the middle we have our output gap. Okay, so that's it. Okay, so our actual, we're on Y. Our output gap is between Y and Z, and Z is our potential growth. Okay, so we could shift our PPF outward. Okay, so the economy is actually increasing what it can produce. Maybe we have better technology. Okay, so we used to be efficient, but now we're actually more efficient, right? So we can produce more with the same resources. So that's our potential growth, okay, with this technology. All right, so very easy. Yeah. Now, this is the tricky bit. Okay, there are lots of economic growth models. All right, there are quite a few, right? So we have your classical growth theory, your Solo Swan model, Harrow-Dommer growth model, the Big Push model, like Big Bang, Lewis structural change model. You got your Rostow's model, you got the endogenous model, quite recent, Roman Lucas. So it depends. Now, the thing is, all of them have different ideas as to how to grow the economy. So how to shift our PPF to the right, how to move our long run aggregate supply curve to the right. That's what they want to do. But they're just slightly different on how they do it, right? Now, I'm not going to bother you too much with the details of each, but what you should know is that labor, capital, and technology are vital. They're key in all these growth models. It doesn't matter. They all have a role for labor, capital, and technology. Okay, and you can tell, because you need labor to produce the stuff, you need capital, right, to buy the input, you need technology because technology just enhances production. Okay, so it doesn't matter how they want to factor in the production. They might say income is a function of say capital, say labor, maybe entrepreneurship, right, or land, for instance, right? Doesn't matter how they want to, they all recognize, right? And then recently technology has joined the mix, so technology has now joined this mix here, so we have T as well. Okay, so there you have it, right? They all recognize that labor, capital, and technology will influence all your other factors of production and help the economy to grow. Okay, so how can a government promote growth? Okay, how can we promote economic growth? Um, any supply side policy that increases aggregate supply would promote economic growth. The thing to know is we're not just interested in demand side policies. Okay, so we have our price and we have our output. Let's have Q there for quantity of output. Now, remember what our long run aggregate supply curve looks like, okay? Now, if we get to a place, right, where all we're doing is increasing aggregate demand and aggregate supply stays the same, all we'll be doing will be to increase the price level, right? Output is staying the same and price would be rising. So we don't want that, right? So we would have one price here, we would have another price here. We don't want that. All we want to do is to shift our long run aggregate supply curve to the right, okay? So anything that can do that is welcome, right? Anything that can give us a new long run aggregate supply curve is very welcome, as opposed to just a demand side policy, okay? We don't want to just increase aggregate demand. No, we don't want that, right? So how can we have this new long run aggregate supply curve to our right? Okay, first thing we could do is we could provide training for employees. Okay, so what we're doing is with the current employee base, we're producing more. We can promote mobility so people can find new jobs. Okay, so maybe technology takes over jobs in a certain sector. We can make it easier for people to get trained, to be more mobile, so they can move from maybe one sector, maybe from making obsolete materials into making new, brand new materials, right? We can have tax incentives as well to encourage more people to work, encourage research and development, and to encourage entrepreneurship, right? We'll see how R&D can help and how entrepreneurship can help. But all of these can help because we don't want people to be on benefits. We want them to be out there producing and making new stuff, all right? Okay, so how can R&D help? R&D can help because we can develop new products, we get new ways of doing things, and our firms become more productive. Think about it. With the rise of the iPhone, think about how many jobs have been created, right? Think about how many people have had a source of income, right? Think about, you know, that all the apps and how that has made all our lives better, right? Think about oil, for instance, okay? Like just think about oil. Think about all the jobs, all the income, right? Think about what that did to our standards of living, right? So you can tell um, all these things can, they come about by research and development because the iPhone, if we knew how to make it 100 years ago, maybe we would have, right? Right? It's because we did the research and we know how to do it now. Oil, maybe just innovation generally, cure for cancer, you name it, food production, right? So research and development can help us to get new products, we get new ways of doing things, and we become more productive. We can make new stuff. Um, when we increase our research and development expenditure, normally that leads to high productivity, like we said. So we get higher productivity, we have reduced costs due to more efficient ways of doing things, and we have higher quality product just by doing R&D, okay? So we actually fulfill these three conditions, which is good as well, right? So we're producing more because we have decided to go and do some research and development. Now, the other thing we said to take note of was developing an entrepreneurial culture. This helps. Okay, think about what we just said about the iPhone or oil or whatever industry. Think about Microsoft or whatever, right? Somebody has to start the firm. Okay, if somebody doesn't start the firm, think about what happens to all that potential, right? So an entrepreneurial culture helps, right? Because then these people can take this new products to the market and they can employ labor, right? And we have all this enjoyment. Our standards of living improves. All right, so how can we promote entrepreneurship? We can give benefits and support to people who want to start a business. We can encourage banks to provide finance and to take risks, to invest in startups, okay, very important. And we could provide legislation that allows people who fail in business and go bankrupt to start again more quickly. This is important as well. So maybe don't laugh at them. Hopefully they've learned their lesson the first time and then they could come back and be more successful. Okay, now moving on to the economic circle. Like we said, we're trying to move our long run aggregate supply curve to the right. But it's not a usually smooth ride, right? There's lots of bumps on the way, okay? It looks like this, like this diagram we have over here, right? So it's a tricky one. So national income growth does not follow a steady path. You see, growth, it tends to occur in circles, and we like to refer to that as the economic circle. All right, and we have different stages. We have what we call our boom, right? Our recession, our slump, and then we have our recovery, and then we go all the way again. Okay, but what do these terms mean? Let's define these terms. So like we said, the economic circle shows the pattern of economic growth that tends to occur in economies over time. Okay, because shifting the long run aggregate supply curve isn't that easy to do. So we have this circular pattern, okay, and we have different stages. You have the boom, the recession, the slump. Some would call it a depression or recovery. Okay, now there's certain things to consider in all these stages, in all these phases. GDP growth, demand, unemployment, and investment. Okay, let's see how they relate to the phases. Now, your first phase is your boom, right? Now, your boom refers to a period of positive economic growth and prosperity when there is an increase in the real output or income of an economy over time. So things are good here. GDP growth is going up. Demand's going up in the economy. Unemployment is going down. Investment is also going up. So things are looking up in the economy. This is what we want, right? But then you can have a recession. A recession is about negative growth in the economy for at least 2 continuous quarters, so 6 months. So every quarter is 3 months. You have 4 quarters in a year. When you have a retraction of the economy, negative growth in the economy for at least 2 continuous quarters, that's 6 months, you have what we call a recession. Some textbooks will say it's an economic situation in which for at least 3 quarters there are not any growth in the economy. So, now we're talking 9 months, right? It depends, but you could tell that we're contracting, right? So we're not growing, okay, for between 6 months to 9 months. All right, so what's happening to GDP growth? It's going down, demand's going down, unemployment is going up, investment is going down, right? So, really bad. We don't want this. Then you have what's even worse than this. This is your depression, right? This is what happened in the 1930s. So the recession is what we just came out of between 2007, 2009. But the depression is even worse. This happened during the 1930s, right? So you have a sustained long-term downturn in economic activity in one or more economies, right? So think about the Great Depression. It happened in America. It spread across the Western world, in the UK, Germany, you name it. So what happens during this period? Unemployment is high. There's a downward pressure on price and profits. Business confidence is really low. And you can have a real GDP decline of maybe more than 10%. Okay, some would say if you have a recession lasting 2 years, that qualifies as a depression. Okay, so what's happening? GDP growth very, very low for a long time. Demand very, very low for a long time. Unemployment very, very high, very exceedingly high for a long time. And investment very, very low. But the difference between your recession and slump is your depression is worse. So it's like the worst of the worst. And it's usually maybe 2 years after a recession. Now, your recovery is when you start to pick up. You're trying to get back to the boom, right? So your recovery is when you're trying to pick up from a depression or a recession. You're trying to get back up. So demand starts to pick up, production increases, business confidence picks up, and that leads to more investment. So GDP growth starts to go up, demand starts to grow up, unemployment starts to come down, and investment starts to go up as well. Okay, so once again, this is what it looks like. You go from your boom, things are good. You get to your recession, not so good. Slump, really, really bad. Someone say depression, recovery, start to do better again. So if you look at those 4 items, GDP growth, demand, unemployment, and investment, you can analyze the economic circle. Now, what causes the economic circle? First thing is what you call expectations, right? This is a bit tricky, but it's a bit like kumbaya, right? So what you expect is going to happen, okay? We call this self-fulfilling prophecies, and that's why economists, we don't like to prophesy doom, right? Because if people think the economy is going to do better, it usually does. Because what will happen is people will go out, and because they think things are going to get better, they're going to go out there with a smile on their face, a spring in their step. They're going to go out there and they're going to spend money. And when they spend money, of course, that's going to make the companies to hire more people to produce more goods. And those people will spend even more money, and then the economy gets better. Okay? So if people just expect the economy to get better, I know it sounds kumbaya-ish. It sounds like, too good to be true. But it actually happens. So if people expect the economy to get better, it would generate greater spending and investment by households, companies, and that should stimulate further economic growth. How about stock levels? If you have lots of raw materials, lots of stock, components, finished goods, unfinished goods, things you're waiting to sell, you won't want to waste that. So you might invest in infrastructure or facilities to sell them. And that should help growth, So if we have lots of raw materials, lots of iron, for instance, in our soil, we want to do stuff to get it out there, right? So that helps as well. Stock levels and government policy. So the government can help spur economic growth, or it can help slow it down. And what happens is, if we mistime our government intervention, if we don't do it when we should, it could make the economic circle even worse than it is. So we'll have higher booms and lower depressions because of what the government has done, maybe due to outdated data or slow decision making. Okay, things like a tax cut or an increase in interest rate that would actually exacerbate the economic situation. We'll show that in a minute. Okay, we'll see that now. So here we have the effect of a mistimed government intervention. So here what we should have is our normal economic circle. Okay, right, the red line. And then you see with government intervention, you have a worse economic circle, the dotted blue lines around it, right? So see what's happened. Say we were here, right? We're at this point right there and we were having a boom. And the government's like, hey, things are going too fast. Inflation is high. We need to slow down the economy. And then they start deflationary policies, say they increase tax rates, they increase interest rates, they stop subsidizing. The economy then slows down. The economy slows down, and it slows down too much. We should be here. This would have been the natural rate. And then the economy slows down, and then they get here to the depression, to the slump. And they're like, oh, no. We messed things up. Let's try again to speed the economy up. Okay, so once again, they reduce taxes, increase interest rates, they give more subsidies, and then the economy starts to pick up and starts to go fast. And they're like, oh no, the economy is it's too much to get to a boom, and it's higher than it should have actually been. And then once again they're like, oh no, we need to increase taxes again. Yeah, we need to increase taxes. We need to slow things, and then you get that. So a mistimed government intervention can do that. Okay, so what are the leading indicators of an economic circle? So our most common leading indicators of the economic circle, they include things such as consumer confidence survey. So this will help us know what expectations are of people in the future, right? So remember what we said, if expectations are good, the economy usually does well. We can do confidence surveys, ask consumers, how are you feeling about the economy? Are you going to spend? Are you going to cut down? Are you going to save more? And then we can find out where the economy is heading, right? New car registrations, okay? So if people are buying new cars and registering them, they're going to have to drive them somewhere, right? Which is a good sign. Okay, they need fuel, for instance. They need to get to places. So that's a good sign. We can find out how the job market is doing by number of adverts out there, the recruitment advertising. Depends on how much jobs are needed. If that's robust, we know that the labor market is actually hiring. Mortgage applications, really good. Okay, people are going to have to pay their mortgages. So this is good. We can tell people planning for the long term. There's going to be money coming into the banks for long term. So this is also a very good sign. We can know if the economy is speeding up or contracting. If mortgage applications are down, for instance, we know we have to do something. Mortgage applications are high, then we know the economy is looking good. Share prices as well, right? So if share prices are FTSE, Nasdaq, Nikkei, if it's high, that shows just profitability, right? People are buying and selling goods. Okay, so this can indicate early on what's happening in the economy. That's why we call them leading indicators. Okay, I was going to ask this in class. I was going to ask how productivity can help economic growth. You should remember productivity is an important measure of efficiency, right? It relates quantity of inputs to output. So, how much waste are we having? How efficient are we? If we're getting lots of output in return for our inputs, then we're more efficient, right? So is productivity important for economic growth? Definitely. It's a massive yes. There's definitely no question about it. It's a gold standard. It's something we know, right? It's a law. How? Productivity care is important because it determines living standards. Okay, it quantifies how an economy uses the resources it has available. Right? because it relates the quantity of inputs to output, which is efficiency, right? So by relating the quantity of inputs to output, we're saying how efficient are we? How much do we waste, right? How do we produce these products? Okay, so productivity is very, very, very important. There's an adage, productivity isn't everything, but in the long run, it's almost everything. So higher productivity can and should lead to lower unit cost, should lead to improved competitiveness, better trade performance, higher profits, higher wages, and of course economic growth, which is what we want, right? This productivity improvement and higher wages, right, would also boost consumption, so more people are going to spend, and tax revenue will go up because we will tax their spending and we will tax whoever they're buying the products from. Okay, so we can use that tax revenue to better the economy again. So it's sort of a spiral effect, which is what we want, right? So that's it for today, folks. Hope you enjoyed the lecture. Let's just go over our key learning points once again. So we found out that economic growth is measured by an increase in the real output or income of an economy over time. We also found out that growth may bring a higher average income per person, but this does not necessarily mean that the quality of life is better or that this growth is desirable. So that is when we have to talk about economic development, because that is a better measure. We also said that growth in the economy occurs when national income increases. Now, there are many other factors to consider when we're talking about quality of life, like health or literacy, for instance. We said national income growth does not follow a steady path, so growth tends to occur in circles. We called this the economic circle, and we talked about a boom, recession, slump or depression, and a recovery. We said the government often intervenes to stabilize growth, but this mistimed intervention can lead to further instability. We showed that in our graph. We said leading indicators may be useful to identify future changes in the economy. Leading indicators like mortgage applications, for instance, like car registrations, for instance, like consumer confidence surveys, for instance. And finally, some key points that you might just want to keep in mind too. We said potential growth in an economy can be shown by an outward shift of its production possibility frontier. So it looks like that. We said we had our PPF. Say good A, good B, then you have that, and then we can have another one there. So this was our actual growth. First one, actual growth. And second one, potential growth. Said when you have that shift, okay, that's our potential growth. What's in the middle? You guys remember? It's called the output gap. Okay. So yeah, potential growth in an economy can be shown by an outward shift of its production possibility frontier. We also said productivity is an important measure of efficiency, right? It helps to show our output to input ratio, shows how much waste we're having, how good we're doing with our input. So, that's a very important measure. We also said productivity growth helps economies to grow. So we're becoming more productive, less waste, more efficient, and we can grow better. And finally, we said entrepreneurship leads to innovation and job creation. We gave some examples like oil companies, you name it, just Standard Oil, Shell, Chevron, to your iPhone. And all these innovations will lead to job creation, and this can stimulate economic growth. So all good all around. So if you want to read up, just look at our core textbook, the Gillespie book, Foundations of Economics by Oxford University Press. That will help. You could just go over the core text. It should help put everything in context and should help you in your personal revision. Next week, we'll be talking about balance of payments and exchange rates. You want to read ahead of the class, or you just want to know. Okay. Hope you have a fantastic week, and it was great being here. If you have any issues, don't be afraid to send me a text message. You have my email address. It's on Blackboard. So yeah, just send me an email. Come to my office hours. Send me an email, and then I know you're coming to the office hours. And yeah, have a great week. If you have any issue, please send me an email, and I'll be glad to discuss with you. So I hope this lecture was fine. I know we're having Futures Fest this week, and be good to everyone. Bye.